योगेन चित्तस्य पदेन वाचां मलं शरीरस्य च वैद्यकेन योपाकरोत्तं प्रवरं मुनीनां पतञ्जलिं प्राञ्जलिरानतोऽस्मि आबाहुपुरुषाकारं शङ्खचक्रातिधारिणं सहस्रशिरसं श्वेतं प्रणमामि पतञ्जलिम् गुरुर्ब्रह्मा गुरुर्विष्णुर् गुरुर्देवो महेश्वरः गुरुः साक्षात् परब्रह्म तस्मै श्रीगुरवे नमः हरि ओम्. In the previous session, we looked at 4.12 and 4.13, and the context was Satkaryavada, where Patanjali and Vyasa were establishing the Siddhanta of the Yoga, Sankhya Yoga philosophy, that nothing gets created out of the blue, nothing gets completely destroyed, but there are transformations taking place. And this was brought in the context of discussions of vasanas. So this is to just set some context. And the just previous sutra that we saw was 4.13, which was Te Vyakta Sukshma Gunatmanaha, where it said that in the ultimate analysis, everything in Prakriti, everything in the phenomenal world, everything in the creation, in the end is made up of Sattva, Raja and Tama. So, what it said was that even though everything is made of that, the essential form of Sattva, Raja, Tama is not directly visible to us. So whatever is visible to us are different configurations, different forms, which was referred to as Tututchakam, means transitory and transient. Now that leads to a certain question, which Vyasa puts as a preamble to the Sutra 4.14, which says, Yada tu sarve gunaha katam ekah shabda ekam indriyam miti. So there is one point that needs to be explained, needs to be understood, which is, if everything is made up of just gunas, sattva, raja, tama gunas, which are the three types of ultimate entities, if everything is made up of that, then how come we are able to refer to certain things like, okay, this is Shabda as an entity, this is a certain Indriya as an entity. So how do entities and things come about, and how are we able to do Vyavahara? Vyavahara means be able to refer to them, be able to interact with them, etc. Because in the normal parlance, we refer to things and entities as padarthas. Now what is padartha? Padartha means usually we say it is a thing or it is an entity. But the way the word is formed, padartha means padasya arthaha padarthaha. Meaning, it is what is denoted by a term in the language, which means something that has been named and can be denoted by it. So if you look at the Nyaya Shastra, etc., nameability and knowability is something that is known as abhideyatvam or vachyatvam and nyayatvam. These two are common characteristics of everything. So when we refer to as entities or things, that means something that can be referred to or denoted. So the question is, if everything is made up of sattva, raja, tama gunas, then how does it work or how does it operate so that we can refer to things such as Shabda, Indriya, or even a tree, a cow, etc. How does that operate if everything is just made up of gunas and which are changing all the time? So how are these things coming about? So that sort of deserves explanation. So that is the question put forth before the sutra is introduced. Then comes the sutra that addresses it by saying pariṇāmaikatvādvastutattvam, which says there is a certain ekatva in the parinama, a certain harmony. So the parinamas, while changes are happening, parinama means transformations as we have seen. But there is a parinama ekatva, there something is getting transformed together. So sattva, rajatama gunas that constitute what we refer to as a certain thing. There is certain harmonious, meaningful parinama that happens. And therefore, there is vastutattvam. So it is not as though these gunas are changing entirely arbitrarily, in which case it will be complete chaos. But there are meaningful transformations leading to configurations that we can interact with. And that is referred to as vastu. So there are things with a reality under its base. So that is vastavyam. So this vastu exists. Why? Because there is a parinama ekatvam. The parinamas are happening across the sattva, rajatama gunas, form certain configurations that have a certain reality, even though impermanent. But while it lasts, there is a reality that allows us to interact with it. And therefore, it says pariṇāmaikatvād vastutattvam. That is Sutra 4.14.
So, we are embarking upon a very interesting topic. And enunciation to this sutra is also quite fascinating. If gross, subtle, if everything is of the nature of gunas, if the gunas are material cause or first material cause, then everything should be of the nature of sattva, rajatama guna. Or anything should come out of anything, because the material cause of everything is one and the same. Like even in ultra-modern physics, we come across such a condition that the atoms are at the base of every object that we see, and there are subatomic particles which are common, be that solid matter, be that gaseous matter, or be that liquid matter or any kind of matter. It is all composed by subatomic particles which are proton, neutron, electrons. But then we get diversity. So the unity and diversity principles are to be understood in the creation here as on that basis. So the question comes up, if everything is sthula, sukshma, gross and subtle, is everything gunatmaka, then anything should come out of anything. But that doesn't happen. What we can get from milk is a particular kind of modulation, such as curds, butter, buttermilk, clarified butter, etc. From milk, we won't be getting the stone or gold or silver or any kind of metal. So the system, the universe is cosmos, not that anything will come out of anything. So how is the vastu tattvam formulated when everything at the source of it is sattva, rajatama gunas, according to the previous sutra? So that's the prima facie view which Vyasa has projected. And therefore he says, pariṇāmaikatvād vastu tattvam. In particular channel of changes, you will only get one kind of result or object. If the process is changed, you will get different kind of outputs. So parinama ekatva, particular kind of parinamas will give you particular output. If you change the parinama krama, or if you change the modification process, then you get different things. And that's why we have this diversity. Although it is all sattva, raja, tama gunas, we have everything from serene to ignoble, from very quietening to very agitating, turbulent, from brighter objects to darker objects. Everything comes out of it. It is because of pariṇāmaikatva, which we have seen on an earlier occasion. So pariṇāmaikatvādvastutattvam. So from three gunas only, we are getting these countless, boundless objects in the universe. Diversified objects come from one and the same source. So that is what the sutra is now going to postulate. The unity and diversity coming together, their coexistence. The diversity is rooted in unity. The sattva, raja, tama gunas are the vyakta sukshma. All manifestations are essentially of that nature. But it doesn't mean that we have all manifestation either sattvic, rajasic, tamasic, or we don't get anything from everything, because the material cause is one and the same. Like if your material cause is, say, clay, from clay you can get any form. If material cause is gold, from gold you can get any form, such as bangle, necklace, and various kinds of ornaments, because the material cause is the same. But here, similarly here, the sattva, raja, tama gunas are the material cause, but then we get these diversified objects, padarthas, which you just have heard. So these are indriyas, those are padarthas. So indriyas with reference to animate creation, and padarthas with reference to inert creation. All comes from sattva, raja, tama gunas. And therefore we are embarking upon a very interesting topic, pariṇāmaikatvādvastutattvam. Okay.
Now let's look at Vyasa's Bhashya. So Vyasa begins by saying, Prakhya kriya sthiti shīlānām gunānām grahanātmakānām karanabhāvēna ekah pariṇāmah śrotram indriyam. So he says, the three gunas of the form of prakhya, kriya, and sthiti. So these are alternative terms to refer to sattva, raja, and tama, because prakhya refers to that aspect of sattva which brings about jnanam or khyatihi. So therefore prakhya. Rajoguna brings about activity. So kriya. So prakhya, kriya refers to activity. Sthiti means inertness. So tamoguna is said to be of the nature of being inert. Also of the nature of veiling the knowledge, covering the knowledge. So there are three aspects or three characteristics of the three gunas are being used, the terms prakhya, kriya, sthiti, which we have seen in the previous sutra also. So that is their sheelam. Sheelam means very nature. So prakhya, kriya, sthiti, sheelanam. So the sattva guna is a prakhya sheelam, rajoguna is kriya sheela, and tamoguna is sthiti sheela. So prakhya, kriya, sthiti, sheelanam gunanam grahanatmakanam. So of the nature of grahanam. So as we have seen, there is a grahya and the grahana. So grahya is what can be grasped by the indriyas, by the sensing mechanisms, sensing organs. Grahya is what can be grasped by them, and grahana is the actual sensing mechanisms and sensing organs. So here, prakhya, kriya, sthiti, sheelanam, gunanam, grahanatmakanam, of the nature of grahana, of the nature of the grasping entities, karanabhavena, in the form of or in the function of the instrument, karana, which is the indriyas or the sensing organs, the sensing mechanisms. So karanabhavena ekah parinamah shrotram indriyam. So one parinama, one transformation in the form of a sensing instrument of these three gunas is referred to as shrotram indriyam, the hearing indriya, the hearing sense organ. So this comes from the question asked in the beginning, yada tu sarve gunaha katham ekah shabda ekam indriyam iti. So the answer to that ekam indriyam is given here, that the three gunas, when transformed together in the form of a grasping entity, one of those is shrotram. Similarly, grayatmakanam shabdabhavena ekah parinamah shabdo vishaya iti. So the gunas, in their aspect of being the grahya, graspable, knowable, that is grayatmakanam, one transformation, ekah parinamah, shabdabhavena, in the form of shabda. Shabda is that which can be heard. So shabdo vishaya iti. So there is this correspondence between the hearing sense and the thing that can be heard. So the same gunas can be transformed as ekah parinama, as a single unified transformation into the hearing mechanism, which is grahanatmaka, and also into something that can be heard, which is shabda. So shabda is a term that denotes something that can be heard. So that is that common aspect that exists in everything that can be heard, the sound in itself. So that is known as shabda vishaya. Now further things happen. Shabdadinam murti samana jatiyanam ekah parinamah prithvi paramanu tanmatravayavah. So now shabdadi means the vishayas, which is shabda, etc. So we know shabda, sparsha, rupa, rasa, gandha. So these are the vishayas, which is the sound in itself, touch in itself, rupa, form, rasa, taste, gandha. So things that can be grasped. Now, murti samana jatiyanam, those with a similar form, there is a common transformation, ekah parinamah, which leads to prithvi tanmatra, prithvi paramanu, of which tanmatra avayavah. So the prithvi, the sort of the fundamental particle of prithvi. The prithvi, as we know, there is prithvi, aap, teja, vayu, akasha, are said to be the five elements, of which then everything else is formed. So these five elements in their pure forms, how do they come about? So they come out by the transformation of shabdadi, because the prithvi is said to contain all five, shabda, sparsha, rupa, rasa, gandha. There is a single transformation that creates the prithvi paramanu, the fundamental particle of prithvi, of which the tanmatra is a avayava, it is a part. So these tanmatras, shabda tanmatra, sparsha tanmatra, etc., they constitute the prithvi paramanu, and in all of this there is a ekah parinama, a common unified transformation that brings this about. Furthermore, tesham cha ekah parinama prithvi gauhu vriksha parvatah iti evam adihi bhutantareshu api स्नेह औष्ण्य प्रणामित्व अवकाश दानानि उपादाय सामान्यम एक विकारारंभः समाधेयः. So the Vyasa continues. He says, Tesham ekah parinama. Now that we have this Prithvi Paramanu, if we take these, and then there is a common unified transformation that happens, that leads to things like Gauhu. Gauhu is a cow. Vrikshaha, the tree. Parvataha, the mountain, etc. get formed. by transformations involving the Prithvi, etc. Paramanus. And similarly, this has to be applied. Evam adi bhutantareshu api. To other bhutas, which is Aap, Teja, Vayu, Akash, for them also it is to be applied by sneha. Sneha means that property of water which can bring in sort of the softness or the, like we say, an oiliness, a softness that comes in, that's known as sneha. Aushnya is the heat. Pranamitva, the ability to carry, like the air can carry things along with it. Then avakasha dhanam means the giving space, right? So everything needs space. What gives space is the akasha element. So avakasha dhanam. So having considered this, or having included these, all the other transformations get formed, such as the cow, the tree, the hill, or the mountain, etc. So all of this is samanyam ekavikararambha samadeyah. So all of this is to be taken as a common transformation that takes place and leads to these entities sort of getting formed. So essentially, what is being explained is, even though everything is made up of gunas, how nameable, knowable entities that are familiar to us, how do they come about, along with the sense organs that can actually sense and grasp them. So that is the vikararambha. From the vikaras means the transformations that begins to happen and things take place. Once again, this reminds us of the mantra from the Chandogya Upanishad that we had referred to earlier, which is Vacharampanam Vikaro Namadeyam, etc. So it was Vacharampanam Vikaro Namadeyam Mrittiketyeva Satyam. It was in the Sadvidya of the Chandogya Upanishad, where it is said, these vikaras, that it all comes up from transformations of that thing called Sat, which then allows us to refer to them by Vak, by the organ of speech. And similar to how Mrittika, so just like you can take clay and give it various shapes and forms, and each shape and form then gets a name, like, okay, this is a pot, that is an idol, this is a plate, and so on. Similarly here, the gunas get transformed, and the transformations then lead to the various entities that we can interact with in our regular day-to-day life, and they are at our scale. But they are still made up of the Prithvi, Paramanu, etc., the Shabda, the Tanmatras, and so on. That whole the whole pipeline, so to speak, is sort of explained here.
So, it's a very interesting topic, and for common man to comprehend, this is how an example is given. Say, for example, preparation of a cup of tea. What are the ingredients? Tea leaves, water, sugar, milk. So these are the basic ingredients, and with which we turn out a hot beverage called a cup of tea. Now, if you change the proportions of that, in that, you can have variety of outputs coming, right from very, very, very bitter substance to very, very, very sweet flavored milk, or called, almost it can be basmati. That is a very thick product from milk. So, suppose tea leaves are plenty, sugar is just a pinch, the milk is also a drop, and then it is primarily water. Then you get something like medicated water, and which is very, very bitter to taste. Now, if you change the proportions, that lot of milk, drop of water, and just a tea leaf, one or two tea leaves for color only, and lot of sugar, then you will get a sweet preparation called basundi or payasam. So while if you do in the proportion for which we do for cup of tea, it would be cup of tea. There can be strong tea, there can be light tea. As we know, the tea can be ranging between that. So one hand we can have kashaya, then we can have various forms of tea from very light to very strong, and then further you can also get something like milk product called basundi or payasam with milk profusely there in good proportion. So by change in proportions of constituents, we can get different outputs. So here the example is given. One is making out the grahya tattva and grahana tattva. So the example that you heard about, that Prithvi and then the Shabda Vishaya and the Tanmatra, or the Grahya Murti and Prithvi Paramanu, or Grahya Shabda and the Grahana Shrotram. So Indriyas also are coming from same material, and objects of Indriyas are also coming from same material. It is only different constitution. In one constitution you will get the sense organ formulated. In another proportion of it, you will get the object of sense organs such as Shabda, Sparsha, Rupa, Rasa, Gandha. So there is an interesting example given that when there is a fire, there comes a firefighter and blows a lot of water and the fire is extinguished. So what was extinguished? Fire. What was fire? Proton, neutron, electron. What extinguished it? Water. What is water? Proton, neutron, electron. So proton, neutron, electron consumed proton, neutron, electron, or proton, neutron, electron extinguished proton, neutron, electron. So on particle physics, plane of particle physics also, we get such mysterious conditions. We eat food which is proton, neutron, and electron, and one who is eating it is also proton, neutron, electron. The body is also made up of the same matter. So the body matter such as skin, flesh, muscles, bones, they are all Prithvi. But then how they severally manifest? Something is called bone, something is called flesh, something is called muscles, and something is called skin. But they are all Parthiva. So the Prithvi comes in so many different ways, even our body. The Ap Tattva comes in several forms, from sweat to urine to the secretions in the body. So that's how different proportions of Sattva, Raja, Tamo gunas are causing different manifestations. So Grahya, Vishaya and Grahana, both are ensuing from category of Grahya is also from Sattva, Raja, Tamo gunas, and category of Grahana is also Sattva, Raja, Tamo gunas. So Bhutendriyatmaka Srishti, as Patanjali has postulated in cosmology, it is all Sattva, Raja, Tamo gunas. It's only different proportions and different processes will give different outputs. And that's why we have diversity based on unity. Unity is of the nature of Sattva, Raja, Tamo gunas, and diversities, immeasurable diversities, due to proportions in which they come and the process in which they come. So that's very interesting topic that we are considering. Okay.
So now Vyasa then considers some other opinions. This is particularly from the Buddhist philosophers, and will sort of debate against those. So Vyasa says, Nasti artho vijnana visahacaraha asti tu jnanam अर्थविसहचरं स्वप्नादौ कल्पितम् इति अनया दिशाये vastuswarupam apannovate. Okay. So he's saying nasti artho vijnana visahacharaha. So there are other schools that say that there are no entities without vijnanam or without some mind comprehending those. Astitu jnanam visahacharam swapnado. However, there is knowledge of the entities, vijnanam, without the entities themselves being there, like in the case of a dream. So when you dream about something, that thing is not there, but the knowledge of it is there in the mind. However, say that school says, we don't see that there are things without some mind comprehending it or without the knowledge comprehending it. Because, if we know that, then it's part of the knowledge. So then they are able to claim that. We say, okay, there is nothing unless there is some mind, the vijnanam, actually comprehending it. However, there is knowledge without things being there, like in the case of the dream, where these things are kalpitam, imagined. Saying such things, they apannuvate, so they deny, they reject vastuswarupam, that okay, things have reality in themselves. That itself, they reject it. So they say everything comes forth from the mind. Things themselves have no existence on their own, apart from the mind. So there is no independent existence. Okay, further he continues. Jnana parikalpana matram vastu sapna vishayopamam na paramarthato asti iti ahuhu. Vyasa says further, those they say that vastu, all things are jnana parikalpana matra. It is purely something that is imagined or brought about by the mind. Similar to swapna vishayopamam, similar to things that happen in the dream. Na paramarthato asti. Ultimately, they have no real existence at all. It is something brought about by mind and thought alone, this whole creation. Those who say that, so Vyasa is referring to them, he says, te tateti pratyupasthitamidam swamahatmyena vastu katham apramanatmakena vikalpajnana balena vastuswarupamutsrujya tadeva apalapantaḥ shraddheya vachanasyuhu. This is all these people who, looking at all these things that are very much present, pratyupasthitam, swamahatmyena, very much present by their own self-reality. How are they able to reject these things? By apramanatmakena vikalpajnana balena, using vikalpajnanam. So we have seen what is vikalpa. Shabdajnananupati vastushunyo vikalpaha. In one of the sutras it is said. Something that can be validly constructed through words, but really has no reality as the basis of it. So using such vikalpa jnanam, which is apramanikam, which doesn't hold the test of truth, does not pass the test of truth. How come these people who do that, who reject the very reality of things, vastu swarupamutsrujya tadeva apalapantaḥ, so they bring about the swarupa, the essential form of things, as real, and that itself they consider and reject. How can they be somebody that can be believed or followed? Katham shraddheya vachanaha syuhu. How can they be people who speak things that can be believed and followed? This is how Vyasa ends his bhashya by saying, okay, this is how the reality comes about. This is how the pariṇāmas operate. This is how gunas in the end create everything that we see. How everything has its own independent reality, independent of all the minds, etc., that are cognizing it. And then considering the opposite schools of thought, they are saying such things. They consider the form of things and then reject it. How can they be ones that who can be believed or followed? And with that kind of a lament, he ends this bhashya, and then this will be further scrutinized and considered in the subsequent sutras that come about. But at this point, here ends Sutra 4.14 and the bhashya.
So Vyasa makes it explicit that the sutra is also refuting a stand taken by idealistic philosophers such as Vijnanavadi Buddhas. And then we have on the global scene what is called as panpsychism. They do not accept the objects which are at sight as true objects, and they postulate a philosophy of which is called, what is called as panpsychism, that all these objects are mental mind objects, mind generated objects. They don't really exist. This is the stand of Vijnanavadi Buddhas. So they do not accept any objective entity as real and true. So they say it is all mind fabrication. All objects, Shabda, Sparsha, Rupa, Rasa, Gandha, are mind fabrications. And we have this on the global scene called panpsychism. So that is being refuted also in postulation of what Patanjali says in the sutra, and Vyasa makes it express and explicit. So objects are real because they are made up of sattva, raja, tama gunas. If the cause is real, then the effect should be real. So that's how this is being postulated, that the metaphysics of objects, there is metaphysics of objective entity, and that is sattva, raja, tama gunas, prakriti, etc. And that is indeed true, and therefore it manifesting in several forms and different forms and universal forms is also true. And it is not proper to embrace what Vijnanavadis say, because there is contradiction in their postulations, which Vyasa makes it clear. So how can we really give some credibility to their philosophies, which is Vijnanavada or the panpsychism? That's also called Drushti Srushtivada in the parlance of Indian philosophy. Drushti Srushtivada. First there is Drushti and then there is Srushti. So it is mental fabrication. All creation, physical creation around us is, they say, mind fabrication. But that has been beautifully refuted by Vyasa in his commentary very, very explicitly. So incidentally, panpsychism is also refuted, and the philosophy of the Sankhya that the material manifestation is indeed real because its material cause is also real, that is sattva, raja, tama gunas. Okay.
Okay. So before we move to the next sutra, Guruji on this sutra is very nicely, as we know, he looks at often the sutras are bringing about a certain principle, establishing a certain siddhanta or the yoga darshana and so on. But Guruji very nicely extracts what is the thing that can apply to us and what can we learn from it. So here sutra says pariṇāmaikatvādvastutattvam, because there is a unified sort of a common parinama, and that is what leads to entities that we can interact with, that we can know, then name and so on. So he says this sutra is a good guide for us, because in our practice of asana and pranayama and so on, what I am paraphrasing it, but what we can then see that each and every asana pranayama is a certain configuration. It is ekaha parinamaha. Therefore, it can be named, and there is certain coherence, a certain reality to it, which then we have to appreciate and understand it in its real essence. So when we begin to see, and we'll see that in the next sutra, when we are able to perceive the thing as it is, and it is this jnana of the shastra that can help us appreciate the asanas and pranayamas are leading from a certain common parinama that has brought that about, and then we can scrutinize based on our understanding from the shastras of what things are made up of, what are the indriyas, what are the prana, how are they operating, and so on. We can appreciate the beauty of the single parinama that brings about the asana and pranayama, and that can then lead to things like dvandvana bhigataha, dualities going away, etc. So we have to always bear in mind as we are reading and learning as to how that can be molded and translated in a form that can be applied and pondered upon as part of our practices as well. Even though initially it may look completely unrelated and abstruse, by giving some deeper thought, we can then correlate and can go deeper and deeper, identifying that with aspects that can come about from our practice of asana, pranayama, etc. Okay. So that is 4.14. Next comes 4.15, before which Vyasa asks, he says, Kutaschetad anyayam. So Vyasa just ended 4.14 by saying, how can there be any credibility, like was just said? Katam shraddheya vachanaha syuhu. So then, but one has to know, you can't just make that statement, you have to explain why not. Why is it not credible? So kutaschetad anyayam. Why is it? What is wrong? Why is this not in accordance with Nyaya? Now to answer that comes the Sutra 4.15, which says, vastusāmye cittabhedāttayorvibhaktaḥ panthāḥ. So, vastusāmye, even while having the same vastu in consideration, the same thing, cittabhedāt, because the chitta itself can be different. Here, chitta refers to the cognizing thing and the cognition, the jnanam. Because that is different, tayoho, of the two. Which two? The two here are artha and jnanam. So the world as it is, which is artha, the things as they exist. Jnanam is the world as comprehended. Those two things, vibhaktaḥ, panthāḥ, they have their own separate independent paths. So artha exists, it operates, it transforms on its own, based on its own mechanisms. The jnanam also gets generated and it follows its own path. So very clearly it is said, tayoho vibhaktaḥ panthāḥ. The jnanam resides in the chitta, the artha resides in the world, and they have their own separate paths, even though they interact. So vastusāmye cittabhedāt tayoho vibhaktaḥ panthāḥ. That's Sutra 4.15.
So the panpsychism is being refuted by a sutra here. Well, panpsychy is told that all manifestations are mind fabrications. The question is, whose mind fabrication is that object? There is only one object, but there are 10 cognizing minds. The 10 cognizing minds will be cognizing that one object. Then whose mind has turned out that object? Because a person can be under spell of delusion, tamoguna preponderance. Somebody can be having illuminative intelligence because of the sattva-guna. Somebody might be under rajoguna influence. So which mind is turning out the object which is at sight? And therefore, object is not turned out by your psyche. Our psyche doesn't turn out the object. And that is the panpsychism. The idealistic philosophers in the West and Vijnanvadis in India had this standpoint, and therefore it lacks credibility, because whose mind? Object is one. But then whose mind has turned out the object? If there are 10 people around it and 10 people have made it an object, which mind has turned out? So that's how an interesting objection is raised. Okay.
So now Vyasa gives this bhashya. He says, Bahuchittavalambanī bhutam ekam vastu sadharanam. So one vastu, one thing, becomes the alambanam, means that which is being cognized, right? So the cognitive imprint on more than one, bahu, multiple chittas. So the same vastu becomes the alambanam for multiple chittas. So bahuchittavalambanī bhutam ekam vastu sadharanam. Tat khalu naika chitta parikalpitam napi aneka chitta parikalpitam kintu swapratishthitam. That thing is not something that is parikalpita or imagined and therefore created by one chitta, because it is being cognized by many chittas, and at the same time it is also not being created by several chittas all at the same time, because then there are differences. But it is self-established, swapratishthitam. It has its own independent existence. Katham, how come? Vastusāmye cittabhedāttayorvibhaktaḥ. This is the answer. Because there is one vastu, but there is a multiple chittas and differences between them. Now comes a very beautiful aspect that Vyasa brings about, which lends further color. It is not just objecting to Vijnanavadi, but there is something to learn from. He says, Dharmāpekṣam chittasya vastusāmyepi sukhajñānam bhavati. Adharmāpekṣam tata eva dukkhaඥānam. Avidyāpekṣam tata eva mūಢajñānam. Samyak darṣanāpekṣam tata eva madhyasthaඥānam iti. It's a very beautiful and deep insight, where he says, Dharmāpekṣam means the chitta that is so constituted that it is made up of the dharma samskaras. So it has a lot of sattva guna, a little bit of rajo guna. It is a dharma nimittam chittam or dharmāpekṣam chittam. Now when it looks at the same vastu, that chitta derives sukha, it derives pleasure. Adharmāpekṣam. Now consider another chitta which has a lot of adharma in it. So adharma means the constitution of the chitta is such that there is much more rajatama component than sattva component, and therefore the samskaras that lead to things like krodha, dvesha, etc., anger, envy, hate, and so on. So looking at the very same thing, it generates dukkha, dukkha jnanam, jnanam tinged with dukkha. So for example, let's say somebody has got a beautiful thing like a beautiful car, etc. Dharmāpekṣam chittam, may derive happiness. Oh, what a beautiful thing, very nice. Adharmāpekṣam chittam may feel a sense of envy that, oh, how come they have it? I do something but I don't get it. So that there's that anger, etc. So dukkha jnanam. Avidyāpekṣam tata eva mūಢa jnanam. So if it is, the chitta has a lot of tamo guna, a lot of avidya, where the truth gets veiled, the knowledge is perversely interpreted. So that leads to mūಢa jnanam. It means, oh, whatever, I don't care, what car or who cares about it, and so on. So there is a mūಢa jnanam. That is avidyāpekṣam chittam. Samyak darṣanāpekṣam So this is Samyak Darshanam, means this is a chitta which is almost completely Sattva Guna, so which sees the thing in its reality. Madhyastha Jnanam. So it realizes the nature of the thing. So in our example, okay, it's a beautiful car, yes, this is how it is built, these are the mechanisms, but untouched by it. Madhyastha Jnanam. There is certain unattachment, appreciation, knowledge, but unattachment. That is Madhyastha Jnanam. So there are different chittas constituted by different natures, cognizing the thing in different ways. The dharma apeksha is seeing that with sukha, the adharma apeksha is seeing that with dukkha, avidya apeksha is seeing that with mudatvam, and the samyak darshana chitta is looking at that with unattachment, madhyastham. Now, kasya tachittena parikalpitam. The question is, okay, then if this is the case, then which chitta is creating that thing? Suppose you are postulating that things don't have their own independent existence. Everything is created by a chitta, and these chittas are cognizing it differently. And then which chitta created it? So, nacha anya chitta parikalpetena arthena anyasya chittoparago yuktaha. If some other chitta created something, then a different chitta will not get colored by it. That doesn't make sense. Na yuktaha. Tasmat vastu jnanayoho graya grahana bheda bhinnayoho vibhaktaḥ panthāḥ. And therefore, the vastu and the jnanam, the thing and the knowledge of it, the thing that is grahya, the graspable, and the grahana, the grasping of it, they are different and they follow their own separate paths. Tayoho vibhaktaḥ panthāḥ. Na anayoho sankara gandhopi asti. So these two are not to be mixed, not to be confused. And to emphasize it is na anyoho sankara gandhopi asti, that there is no mixing or confusion. There is not even that smell of that confusion that needs to be. So there is no hint of it, not just that it cannot be confused, should not be confused. There is no hint, indicator, no smell, no indication that there should be any confusion. It is that clear. So nanayoho sankaragandopi. So it is that clear that these are two different separate things that follow their own separate paths. Sankhya pakshe punaha vastu trigunam chalancha gunavrittam iti dharmadi nimittapeksham chittaihi abhisambhadyate nimittanurupasya cha pratyayah nimittanurupasya cha pratyayasya utpadyamanasya tena tenatmana hetur bhavati. So as per Sankhya Pakshe, everything is made up of the three gunas. And the gunas, they keep undergoing transformations. Now, the chitta is also made up of the three gunas. The chitta is also undergoing such transformation. Now, as per the nimittas, they interact, they come together. Abhisambhadyate. So what happens is, and this is where the aspect of yoga as a chitta vishuddhi, we often say purify the chitta. So what happens? How that changes us in our interaction with the world. So here it says, if a chitta is purified, has much more sattva, maybe some amount of raja, when it interacts with an object which is made up of sattva, raja, tama, the correspondence between the sattva of the object and the sattva of the chitta is much higher. And therefore what gets generated is sukha. Whereas if the chitta is made up of tamoguna, it will go and interact with the tamoguna of the object. And therefore what the jnanam that comes about is mudha. So whenever an interaction between a chitta and an object happens, depending on the sattva, raja, tama constitution of the chitta, those aspects of that object they create more of an impression, that is known as uparagaha. And therefore the knowledge that gets generated is tinged by it. And therefore, looking at the same thing, there are different impressions, sukha, dukkha, moda, and madhyastha. And therefore, now we understand the mechanisms by which having a purified mind, an innocent mind, less rajatama, more sattva, etc., it is not only, so to speak, good for us, but it completely changes how we perceive the world and the impressions that the world creates upon us. And that builds upon itself more and more. So the more purified it is, further purification can happen, and so on. So as an aside of what is the Siddhanta that is being explained, Vyasa brings about this very beautiful angle of how the Chitta interacts, because the Chitta is also made up of the three gunas. All things are also made up of the three gunas, and how these two interact with each other, so that one who is more pure is able to derive more knowledge and also derive more sukha from the interaction with the world. So elsewhere it is said, Rajas sahitam sattvam dharmapeksham sukha jnanam janayati. So it is clearly explained. So the sattva guna with some rajoguna in it is said to be dharmapeksham, and it generates sukha jnanam. Sattvameva tu, pure sattva, vigalita rajaskam, where the raja has been completely removed. Vidyapeksham madhyasthya jnanam iti. So pure sattva creates jnanam, knowledge, which is madhyasthya, which is without any attachment. It is like what is referred to as witnessivity. It is seen. One sees but is not affected, not attached. But he gets the complete knowledge. So that is a madhyastha jnanam. This comes from a purely sattva based chitta. Te cha dharmadayo na sarve sarvatra purushe santi kintu kaschit kvachit iti abhyupanna vyavasthita iti. So different chittas have different natures, and that is how the jnanam that gets generated is also different. So this very nicely brings about, it sort of achieves two things. One is to refute the Vijnanavadam by saying things have their own independent existence. But also, like we have seen both in the Vibhuti Pada and the fourth Kaivalya Pada, when the discussion is happening on some so-called abstruse technical aspects, it beautifully gives insights which also will help us in our understanding of the subject and in our own practices. So this is Sutra 4.15.
So the point is, the panpsychism is refuted. That's a very strong position in idealistic philosophies all over the world. There are idealistic philosophies in various parts of the world. And that is panpsychism, and here Vijnanavada. So the thing is that the chitta will be infested by different proportions of gunas. A chitta might be profusely sattva on one hand, to another chitta profusely rajasic, and another one profusely tamasic. The object is going to be the one and the same. So one of the mystic speakers on the philosophy have this example to give us. There is a beautiful rose. A rose flower can be bewitching someone. So very sattvic or dharma infused, permeated mind or subsumed mind will think of divinity, that I should offer this to my personal deity. This beautiful lotus, beautiful rose. So he thinks of divinity at the sight of beautiful flower. Sublimity is what is grasped by sattvic mind. On the other hand, another person looking at that bewitching rose, he thinks of his mistress. And then you can imagine what will happen to his mind function. So, Rajasic person, Tamasic person, these are various proportions of chittas. In three gunas, the different chittas are constituted. It becomes the dharmya chitta or adharma mulak chitta, or then it can be also avidyagrastha chitta, which you heard just now, or it can be madhyastha chitta of a sagacious person. And therefore, these minds react differently. So when the minds are reacting differently to one object, how can you say that object is a product of mind? And that's how the panpsychism in various ways has been refuted by Patanjali and Vyasa. So that's an interesting topic that we have just now covered in the sutra. Okay.
We'll stop the session here for today. Let's recite the slokas on Guruji. Stop. Vajñānikam pravaktrutva āsaneṣu kalavidam yogābhyāse ca tattvajñam vandeham sundaram gurum yoga vruksho hi lokesmin yat preranena vardhitah yogaacharya guro tubhyam sundaraya namo namah. Thank you.
Namaskar, all of you.